Welcome to Cardboard Chemistry. I'm your host, MTG Labman, and today I kind of want to go over the Secrets of Strixhaven Precons, the commanders specifically, and the backup commanders. So without further ado, let's get started. If you know anything about me, I am typically a fan of the backup commanders in commander decks and not necessarily the face commander of each commander deck. That being said, let's get started, and let's start with the Witherbloom Precon. Face commander for the Witherbloom Precon is, of course, Dina Essence Brewer. One colorless, one black, and one green for a 2/3 legendary creature Dryad Druid. The ability, whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card with the worst phrase that you can see on a card in Magic. This ability triggers only once each turn. So, yes, in theory, yes, you could sacrifice a creature on each turn rotation and draw a card, and that does limit the power. The other ability on Dina Essence Brewer is pay 2 colorless and tap her. Sacrifice another creature. You gain X life and put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is the sacrifice creature's power. Now, this is a pretty good ability. Looking at trying to bring in creatures that are low cost, have high power and toughness, like your Rotting Regisaurs, and stuff like that have a downside that you can pay 2, sacrifice that creature. In the case of Rotting Regisaur, that's a 2 colorless, 1 black for a 7/6, but at the beginning of your upkeep you have to discard a card. But you throw that on the battlefield, then you pay 2 and sacrifice the Rotting Regisaur to Dina. You gain 7 life, and then you put 7 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. Seems pretty powerful. It's going to be aristocraty, +1/+1 counter synergies, and I think it'll overall be a solid commander. But moving on to the backup commander, and I really like the backup commander in this deck. Probably if I were to build any deck, it's probably going to be based off this guy. Gorma the Gullet, another 1 colorless, 1 black, 1 green for a 1/1 legendary creature Pest Frog with lifelink. And then whenever another creature you control dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Gorma. Non-token creatures you control enter with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each creature that died under your control this turn. This is going to be a aristocrat deck in Golgari or in Witherbloom. Just cards like Food Chain and Food Chain Exiles, but cards like Ashnod's Altar, Phyrexian Altar, ways to sacrifice creatures to get value, Skull Clamp, sacrifice, attach to one of your 1/1 creatures or 1/1 pest tokens, whatever, draw 2 cards, get counters on your commander, and then tick up the counters, and then just slap a creature on the board that gets +3/+3, +4/+4, easily be able to do in a turn. You put in Hard and Scales effects and stuff like that, and they just get bigger. And then, creatures that have the ability that when you sacrifice them, you put tokens into play equal to their power. Seems like it's going to be a really fun deck, and I'm probably going to brew something up with that. Moving on to the Silver Quill commanders. I just took the quiz from Wizards, and I am technically a Silver Quill. Makes sense. but it's really cool with the enchantment abilities coming up with these guys. So face commander for the Silver Quill deck is Killian, Decisive Mentor, 1 colorless, 1 white, 1 black. So Orzhov, or Silver Quill in this case, for a 2/3 legendary creature human warlock. Has whenever an enchantment you control enters, tap up to 1 target creature and goad it. So goading, it can't attack you unless you're the only player left on the battlefield or beside your opponent. And so in a game of Commander, it basically gives you a little bit of protection, making that creature attack your opponents. It's only till your next turn, but this deck is going to run a bunch of enchantments. And then the second ability is whenever one or more creatures that are enchanted by an aura you control attack, draw a card. So this is kind of like Arietta the Charmed Apple, right? Where, enchanted creatures can't attack you. So in Arietta is in this deck, so this just gives another incentive, like, okay, I'm going to goad your creature, and then whenever an enchanted creature attacks, you get to draw a card. So you're going to be enchanting your opponent's creatures. You're going to, incentivize people attacking other players, and then I can enchant your creature, make it bigger. And I think flash enchantments are going to be really good in this deck. Like during combat, if somebody's attacking one of your opponents, you can flash in a flash enchantment and put that on the creature, and then you get to tap down a target creature. A lot of combat tricks. You're going to tap down, say, a blocker, let that creature get through, and then next time whenever that creature attacks, you get to draw a card. Moving on to the backup commander, which I think is really cool, and I really like the artwork on this card. Scriv, the Obligator, 2 colorless, 1 white and 1 black, for a 2/3 legendary creature Inkling Bird with flying and death touch. And then whenever Scriv enters or attacks, create a white aura enchantment creature token named Contract attached to target creature an opponent controls. The token has enchant creature, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn if it's attacking one of your opponents. Otherwise, its controller loses 2 life. Right? This is an incentive for, hey, I'm going to put this thing on your creature. It's going to be a political piece. I'm going to put this creature or this enchantment on your creature. As long as you're not attacking me, that creature gets +2/+0 whenever it attacks. If you attack me, you lose 2 life. This card is also going to be really hilarious if you flicker it. Right? If you have a blink deck and you flicker this multiple times in a turn, you can put multiple copies of that enchantment, because it doesn't say if you put another copy of this enchantment on a creature, it destroys the original. So you could have like 4 or 5 copies on this if you're flickering Scriv, and then say, okay, if you attack an opponent, that creature is going to get +10/+0 until end of turn. But if you attack me, you lose 10 life with that creature. So it's going to be a real fun. I could see this being built as a blink deck, and definitely a fun blink target in Orzhov colors. Moving on, we have Rutha, Mastering the Moment. She is a 2 colorless, 1 blue and 1 red. She is the face commander for the Prismari Precon. 3/4 Orc Sorcerer. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you've cast an instant or sorcery spell this turn, create an XX blue and red elemental creature token with flying and haste, or X is the greatest mana value among instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. So kind of limits you to playing big instants and sorceries on your first main phase. To get the token, Prismari and the Izzet color pairing in Strixhaven looks like it's going more towards playing bigger spells. Of course, if you look at the Opus mechanic, it's like a revised version of Magecraft, where you get a benefit for playing whenever you cast instant and sorceries, but then you get a greater benefit for playing higher mana value instants and sorceries. So this wants you to play high mana value instant and sorcery on your first main, or at your upkeep if it's an instant, and then create the big token that you can then swing out because it has flying and haste. So it does have evasion. I think it'll be pretty solid. There are ways you can put in all of your mana reducers so that you can cast a 5 mana value spell for like 2 mana. There is the new card, 2 colorless, 1 red and 1 blue. Like, the name escapes me at the moment, but it basically gives you 2 mana per land. Like, all your lands tap for 2 mana to cast instants and sorceries. So that's definitely going to be an add to this deck. Definitely going to be a main component in this deck that allow you to cast higher value instants and sorceries. And 3/4 for 4 mana isn't a bad exchange rate there. Moving on to the backup commander for the Precon, Muddle the Ever-Changing. 2 colorless, 1 blue and 1 red for a 3/3 elemental otter shapeshifter. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Muddle becomes a copy of up to 1 target non-legendary creature you control until end of turn, except it has Myriad. So, Myriad, whenever it attacks for each opponent other than defending player, you may create a token copy that's tapped and attacking that player or planeswalker they control. Exile those tokens at the end of combat. This card, I can see this being a really sneaky card. I don't see you playing this out at turn 4, or when you have the mana to play it. I see you playing this and then holding back an attack, or if you have a haste enabler, getting this out, swinging, making this like a copy of Harmonic Prodigy, or a copy of a gutter snipe effect, or something like that, where if you already have pingers on the board, you make for instance, if you're making a Harmonic Prodigy, you're going to make 2 other copies of Harmonic Prodigy, so all of your wizard stuff's going to trigger like 3 extra times, and then you just start storming off in the middle of combat with instants, just to if you have a gutter snipe effect, you start pinging people for 4, 5, 6 damage every spell you cast, running a lot of cantrips, and then just storming off in the middle of combat, bringing everybody's life total down, because the things you're going to want to make copies of are going to be spell-based, especially because it's whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, so you're going to be looking at a lot of those effects, and those creatures typically don't have high power or toughness, so most likely your commander's not going to survive combat. So I think storming off in the middle of combat is what's going to be the incentive for Muddle. Moving on to the Quandrix Precon, face commander is Zimone Infinite Analyst, 1 colorless, 1 blue, and 1 green for a 0/4 legendary creature human wizard. The first spell you cast with X in its mana cost each turn costs 1 less to cast for each +1/+1 counter on Zimone. Whenever you cast your first spell with X in its mana value each turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Zimone. This is an X spell commander. I do like that it does the mana reduction for each +1/+1 counter on Zimone. Right, this is going to be a very similar deck list, I think, to like Zaxara, the Exemplary Sultai Hydra commander. Right, most of your X spell creatures are going to be Hydras. Most of your X spells are the same ones that you run in Zaxara, minus like a game finisher, because minus like Torment of Hellfire and stuff like that, because of course you're restricted to Simic colors and not Sultai colors. So interesting, but I feel like it's kind of been done before. I do like the mana reduction for the power of Zimone, but like I said, it's going to be a very similar Hydra deck list. Moving to the backup commander, Primo the Unbound. X, 2 green and a blue for a 0/0 legendary creature Fractal Wolf with Trample. Primo enters with twice X +1/+1 counters on it. Whenever one or more creatures you control with base power 0 deal combat damage to a player, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, put a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to the damage dealt. This is going to be your 0 power and toughness matters commander. I like the concept, but you're talking actually, think about it, you could run Slime Against Humanity in this deck, right? You're creating a 0/0 ooze and putting counters on it for each number of Slime Against Humanity. So here, this might be another option for a Slime Against Humanity commander, where you then start creating fractal creature tokens for the damage that you're dealing with your oozes. So there's that. Of course, Hydras start out base power and toughness 0/0. So it's another Hydra commander. Like Endless Ones. Those cards, the X creatures that enter with +1/+1 or enter with +1/+1 counters. Also, a Simic version of a modular commander, right? Modular creatures, most of them enter as 0/0s, and then they enter with +1. Then you add +1/+1 counters onto them, so their base power and toughness is 0/0. So you could have a modular. You could run this as a modular commander. That's a very interesting option. Moving on to the last college, and that college is Lorehold, and the face commander of this deck is actually Quintorius History Chaser. It's the only precon that has a Planeswalker as the face commander. Quintorius History Chaser, 2 colorless, 1 red, 1 white. For a legendary Planeswalker, Quintorius enters with 5 loyalty counters on it. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. Add 1 loyalty. You may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards, then mill a card. So fill up your graveyard. And then -4 spirits you control gain double strike and vigilance until end of turn. And then of course it has the reminder text of Quintorius can be your commander, even though it's a Planeswalker. I like where Lorehold's going. We've seen this in original Strixhaven with cards leaving your graveyard to gain benefits. So I do like the kind of color pie shift to red and white kind of being graveyard play, or exiling stuff from your graveyard, you get benefits. So I think it's going to be pretty cool. Note that Unlike like Orzhov spirits, or mono white spirits, the 3/2 spirits that you create don't have evasion. They're just a 3/2. So no flying on the creatures there. But, this comes in with 5, and if you already have spirits, if you build a red-white spirit deck, you can automatically tick this down, and Quintoris would still survive, right? Because it enters with 5 loyalty, and its ultimate is 4. And give all of your spirits double strike and vigilance, which is actually pretty powerful, right? You can strike out, and your creatures don't tap. So, and of course, double strike, you do first strike and then regular combat damage. So it does make blocking your spirits a much more tedious for your opponents. So pretty solid. I think it'll be a cool commander. See some cool play. And moving on to the last backup commander for the Precons, it's Excava, the Risen Past, 2 colorless, 1 red, 1 white, for a 3/3 legendary creature, Spirit Horse with flying and haste. And then whenever Excava attacks, return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or non-aura enchantment card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. It's a 1/1 spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. So, first off, the name, right? Lorehold's very like archaeological, and you excavate things. So I like the fact that kind of the name of the horse kind of alludes to that. I wish this would have been whenever it enters or attacks. But you do basically, you can reanimate artifact, creature, or enchantment, non-aura enchantment, but there are plenty of good cards to bring back from the graveyard with that selection. I mean, bringing back, even if you're playing Mana Rocks and your Mana Rocks destroyed. Hey, guess what? I'm going to attack with this. It does have flying and haste. So I'm going to attack with this. I'm going to bring back my Mana Rock. It's a spirit with flying, but it's also my Mana Rock. Some of your, some rooms like Dollmaker Shop or something, if that gets blown up and you bring that back, hey, it's a spirit. That's actually kind of funny because whenever you attack with a non-toy creature, you make a toy. Well, your Dollmaker Shop becomes a spirit, which is not a toy. So you can attack with your Dollmaker Shop and make a toy off of it. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be really tricky, elusive. It does enter with a finality counter, so right, if it does get destroyed, then it's exiled from the game. So you might want to run things in there, like nesting grounds or something, where you can remove that counter off. It will remove the finality counter, but it will still remain the creature. So that's something you want to look at. But all in all, I think the Precons look really solid. There's a lot of high-value reprints in each Precon. I think most of these Precons have at least one card in that's like $10 or more, and that's being put in the deck that finally got a reprint. So look forward to seeing the Precons, seeing what people brew. Like I said, I'm looking at Gorma maybe as a build, and just because I have a lot of hardened scales effects sitting around that I'm not using, and really trying to think of a way to brew up Gorma. So that being said, please feel free to comment, like, share, subscribe, comment on what Precon's your favorite, which of the commanders in those precons is your favorite, what you guys are looking forward to most for Secrets of Strixhaven, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.